I always thought the worst moment of my life would be the night my mother died, but I was wrong. The real nightmare came the morning after the mating ceremony, when the alpha himself kicked open the door of my family cabin and stared at me like I'd betrayed the entire pack. Mud dried on my jeans, someone else's blood crusted under my fingernails, and all I could do was stand there, silent, shaking, trying to hide the human boy lying unconscious behind the couch. Maya, Alpha Rowan growled, "Where were you last night? If you've ever been lied to by someone you loved, you might feel this one." Before I tell you what really happened, like this video, subscribe if you love dark wolf tales, and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. It matters. My name is Maya Lawn. I was 21 years old, living in the pine towns outside Flagstaff, Arizona. I didn't tell anyone this part of my life until now. I remember exactly how it all began, like a movie burned into the back of my skull. The sun was falling behind the trees, melting into that deep Arizona orange that makes everything look like it's on fire. The longhouse where the ceremony was supposed to take place was glowing with lanterns, laughter spilling out from its open doors, and I could already smell the bonfire wood burning. Girls my age were brushing their hair, adjusting their dresses, stepping into a destiny they'd been waiting for since childhood. But I stood behind the longhouse, pressing my hands to the wooden wall, trying to breathe. Everyone said I should have been excited. Strong bloodline, powerful wolf spirit, a family legacy tied to the moon's will. But excitement wasn't what I felt. I felt like the ground beneath me was shifting, like something was coming. And then it hit me, sharp and impossible to ignore, the scent of blood. Not wolf blood, human blood, fresh, fading fast. Before I could think, before I could question anything, my feet were moving, my heartbeat pounding, pulling me away from the life waiting for me inside that longhouse. He was lying near the edge of the woods, half hidden under a fallen juniper tree, breathing like every inhale hurt more than the last. A human man, dark hair, warm brown skin. Blood soaking his shirt in a way that told me he'd been running for a long time. Humans weren't supposed to be anywhere near our territory, not without triggering alarms or patrols or warnings from the elders. But there he was, broken, bleeding, alone. When his eyes opened, they were unfocused but desperate, and when he whispered, "Help me," something inside me cracked. I knew the ceremony would start any minute. I knew missing it meant losing my one chance to meet my fated mate. I knew the alpha would see my absence as disrespect. But all those rules and traditions felt so small standing next to a dying stranger. I dropped to my knees, hands shaking as I pressed them to the wound on his ribs. "What happened?" I asked, but his breath trembled instead of answering. Every instinct said, "Walk away." Every rule said, "Warn the pack." Every piece of me said, "Stay." I wrapped his arm over my shoulders and tried to lift him. He was heavier than he looked, and he kept slipping against me, leaving warm streaks of blood on my forearms. We stumbled through the trees, moving as quietly as possible, even though every step felt like thunder in the stillness. Halfway to my cabin, he collapsed again, and for a terrifying second he stopped breathing. I shook him, whispering, "Please stay with me," until his eyes fluttered open. "What's your name?" I asked. "Elias," he breathed. The name felt wrong in this forest, wrong in my world, but I held on to it like it meant something. I knew bringing him to my family cabin was reckless. Humans weren't allowed in pack spaces. The alpha punished wolves for less, but Elias was fading, and I couldn't leave him to die like an animal. So I dragged him forward until the tiny porch light of my cabin finally appeared through the trees, flickering like a distant star. Inside, I laid him on the old couch my father built before he left us. The wood creaked under his weight, the blankets soaking up blood faster than I could replace them. I worked fast, hot water, torn towels, shaking fingers trying to clean claw marks that didn't look like wolf injuries at all. They were too long, too uneven, too wrong. "Who did this to you?" I whispered. His voice came out broken. "They're coming." I didn't know who they were. But the fear in his tone made my skin prickle. I glanced at the clock, 7:42 p.m. The ceremony started at 8. If I left right then, I might still make it. I might still stand before the moonstone, still meet the wolf destiny had chosen for me. I looked at the door, then back at him. My wolf whispered, "Go." But my heart said stay, so I stayed. The ceremony bells began to ring in the distance, soft, echoing, beautiful and cruel. Each chime felt like a piece of my future falling away. I tried to focus on Elias, wiping the sweat from his forehead, telling him he was safe even though I didn't fully believe it. Then a branch snapped outside. Then another. My wolf rose like a shadow inside me, teeth bared, fur standing. I walked toward the window and lifted the curtain just a little. The trees were full of moving shapes, not wolves, not hunters, something taller, wrong in the way they bent and shifted. The air turned cold and sharp. Elias stirred. "They found me," he whispered. The doorknob began to turn. My heart stopped. And in that moment, I realized missing the mating ceremony wasn't the worst thing that happened that night. Something had followed him, something not human, and it had just stepped inside my cabin. The moment that doorknob turned, my whole body went still, like my bones froze under my skin. The cabin was small, too small for hiding, too small for fighting whatever stood on the other side. Elias's breathing grew faster, shallow, panicked, and I knew he felt the danger too. The air inside the room thickened, heavy like someone pressing a hand over my mouth. I stepped backward, slow, silent, praying the floorboards wouldn't creak. My wolf pressed against my ribs, urging me to shift, to fight, to be something wild enough to kill whatever was coming. But shifting would expose Elias, and shifting inside a tiny cabin was like trying to burst out of my own skin. The doorknob clicked again, once, twice, like someone testing it gently, almost politely. Then the politeness ended. A low scraping sound filled the quiet, like claws dragging across the wood. Elias whispered my name with the smallest breath, and I moved fast, grabbing the hunting knife from the table, my fingers tightening around the handle so hard my knuckles throbbed. I didn't know what I was up against. I only knew it wasn't a wolf. And it wasn't here by accident. The door didn't open. Instead, something pressed against it. Slow at first, then harder, enough to make dust fall from the hinges. My heart slammed against my ribs. The scraping stopped, replaced by a strange tapping rhythm, soft and deliberate, like someone or something was thinking. Then silence. A silence so deep it made the ringing in my ears louder. I stepped closer, breath held, trying to catch a scent through the cracks, but all I smelled was wet earth and a faint metallic smell I couldn't name. My wolf growled inside me, warning me to run or kill or both. Then suddenly, the thing outside inhaled. A long, slow breath, like it was smelling me. My blood turned cold. I tightened my grip on the knife. The breathing stopped, and then, without warning, the presence pulled back. I sensed movement, fast, almost too fast to follow, slipping away from the porch, disappearing into the trees without breaking a single branch. A chill rushed down my spine. I waited for footsteps, for sounds of retreat, for anything. But the forest turned dead quiet. Too quiet. They weren't gone. They were circling, watching, learning. I rushed back to Elias and dropped beside him. He was shivering violently, eyes unfocused but wide, like he was reliving something he hadn't escaped. "They're close," he murmured. "They don't stop." I soaked a cloth in warm water and pressed it to his forehead, trying to calm him, even though my own hands wouldn't stop shaking. "What are they?" I whispered. Elias swallowed hard. "Hunters," he said. But I shook my head immediately. Hunters were human. Hunters made noise. Hunters bled the earth with gasoline and gunpowder and anger. "Not like the ones you know," he whispered, reading my face. "Not wolves, not human. Old, wrong." His words didn't make sense, but the fear in them did. I wanted to ask him more, but as soon as he tried to speak again, his eyes rolled back, his body twisting in pain. I leaned over him, pressing my ear to his chest to make sure he was still breathing, and that's when I heard it again. Movement outside. Soft, slow steps. Not one creature. More, surrounding the cabin like a tightening circle. My wolf snarled inside me, and for the first time that night I felt fear not for myself, but for him. I stood and backed away from the couch. Knife raised. My chest rose and fell too quickly, my lungs clawing for air. I could smell them now through the thin cabin walls. Earth, rot, and something old enough to make my wolf whine. I'd never smelled anything like it. These weren't animals, or if they weren't from our lands. The floor beneath my bare feet vibrated slightly, as if the creatures outside moved with too much weight for their size. I thought about running, about shifting, about dragging Elias through the back window, but every option felt like a death sentence. The forest outside looked normal through the window glass, but I knew better. I could feel eyes on me, many eyes, and I hated that I didn't know what they wanted. Suddenly, a shape moved in the corner of my vision. I jerked toward the window and gasped. A tall, distorted silhouette stood between the pines, motionless except for its head, which tilted slowly like it was studying me. I stepped backward until my shoulders hit the wall. My breath came out shaky as the silhouette leaned forward, impossibly far, its limbs stretching like shadows pulled by invisible hands. I blinked, and it was gone. Not turned. Not walked away. Gone, like it had melted into the air. The silence that followed was worse than the danger, because silence meant they were planning something. Silence meant they were waiting, and I didn't know how long before waiting turned into killing. I inched toward Elias, placing myself between him and the window, still gripping the knife like it could make me brave. "Stay with me," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I meant it for him or myself. My mind raced through every lesson the pack had ever taught us: wolves, hunters, shifting, scent trails, moon cycles. But nothing prepared me for this. Nothing explained creatures that moved like smoke and watched like ghosts. And then something changed. The forest sounds came back all at once. Crickets, wind, the distant creak. The pressure in the air lifted. Whatever they were gone. Or so I thought. Because the moment my shoulders sagged with relief, the front door swung open so hard it slammed into the wall. I spun with the knife raised, ready to fight to the death. And that's when he stepped inside. Alpha Rowan, his eyes furious, his chest heaving, mud on his boots like he'd run straight through the forest to get here. He scanned the room once, then twice, nostrils flaring as he caught the scent of blood and human. When his gaze landed on Elias, unconscious and pale on my father's couch, the fury in his face twisted into something else. Shock, horror, betrayal, and with a voice that was low enough to make my knees tremble, he said, "Maya, what have you done?" Alpha Rowan stood in the doorway like a storm wearing a human shape. The cold night clung to his clothes. Pine needles stuck to his boots, and his eyes, those sharp silver alpha eyes, burned straight through me. I'd never seen him look like that. Not at me, not at anyone. He wasn't just angry. He wasn't even furious. He looked afraid. But Alpha Rowan didn't do fear. Not in front of anyone. His chest rose and fell in tight, controlled breaths as he scanned the cabin, taking in the overturned towels, the blood-soaked blankets, the scent of something wrong still lingering in the air. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and deadly calm. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like." My throat tightened. Words wouldn't come. Elias lay unconscious behind me, and I could practically feel Rowan's rising panic like heat rolling off him in waves. "Maya," he repeated, softer but somehow more terrifying, "step aside." Instinct told me to obey. Wolves obey alphas. It's what keeps us alive. It's what keeps the pack whole. But another instinct, older, smaller, stubborn, rooted my feet to the floor. I didn't move. And that defiance, that single act of standing my ground, changed everything. Rowan's jaw clenched. "Move," he growled. Still I didn't. I knew I was seconds away from being dragged aside by force, but something inside me whispered that if I let him near Elias right now, something irreversible would happen. Something I wouldn't be able to live with. He stepped forward, and I stepped back. Not far, just enough to place myself between him and the couch. His eyes widened, shocked that I would block him like that. I could feel my wolf trembling under my skin, begging me to submit, to lower my head, to avoid the punishment that always came when you stood against the alpha. But I lifted my chin instead. "He's hurt," I said, barely managing to keep my voice steady. Rowan's nostrils flared as he inhaled the human scent, the blood, the fear, and something colder crept into his expression. "He doesn't belong here," he said. "You know that." I shook my head. "He would have died." Rowan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You missed the ceremony, your ceremony? For a human?" There it was, the disappointment I'd feared more than anything. It cut deeper than anger ever could. His voice wasn't yelling, it wasn't harsh, it was worse. It was quiet, controlled, like he was choosing every word with the knowledge that they would haunt me. "Do you understand what you've done?" he asked. "The moonstone was waiting for you. The pack was waiting for you." My heart twisted. I knew. Goddess. I knew. But none of them had been bleeding out under a juniper tree. None of them had looked at me like Elias did, like I was the only thing standing between him and death. Before I could answer, Elias stirred. A small sound escaped him, soft and pained. Rowan's attention snapped toward him instantly. He took another step, and this time his voice dropped deeper, becoming the voice that could command a whole pack to kneel. "Maya, move!" I backed up again, blocking him. Rowan stopped walking. His eyes darkened, silver mixing with something darker and more dangerous. "You're protecting him?" he asked, voice tight. "A stranger, a human." I swallowed hard. "He needed me." Rowan stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. "And what about what your pack needed? What about what you needed?" His voice cracked on that last part, just a hair, but enough for me to hear something I'd never expected. Hurt, real hurt, like he wasn't just angry that I'd missed the ceremony, but angry that I wasn't where he expected me to be. Angry that destiny had been interrupted. Angry that something had come between us before we even knew what us meant. I opened my mouth to speak, but then Elias gasped sharply, his back arching off the couch. Both Rowan and I whipped toward him, his body twisted, muscles jerking under his skin like something inside him was fighting to get out. The air grew cold again and my breath hitched. Rowan moved fast this time, reaching for him, but Elias's eyes snapped open first, and they weren't human anymore, not fully, not the warm brown from before. They gleamed like molten gold, flickering like candlelight in a storm. Rowan froze. I froze. Elias clawed at the air, his voice raw. "Don't let them in," he whispered. Then he screamed, a sound so broken it felt like the cabin walls shuddered. He fell back against the couch, gasping, shaking uncontrollably. Rowan cursed under his breath and grabbed my arm, pulling me toward him. "What did you bring to my territory?" he demanded. He dragged me away from Elias, gripping my shoulders with both hands, forcing me to look at him. "Tell me everything. Now!" I tried to speak, but my thoughts were a tangled mess of fear and guilt and confusion. "I found him in the woods," I said. "He was bleeding. He asked for help." Rowan's eyes blazed. "Why didn't you call for me?" I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't know how to say I didn't trust anyone else with him, not even the Alpha I'd respected my entire life. "Something was chasing him," I said. Rowan stiffened. "What?" I shook my head helplessly. "I don't know what they were, but they weren't wolves. They weren't human. They moved wrong." Rowan's grip loosened. A shadow crossed his expression. Fear again, quickly hidden. But I'd already seen it. He stepped away from me and turned toward Elias, scanning him with a wary, calculating stare. "Whatever chased him," Rowan said quietly, "it stepped onto our land." Something in the way he said it sent a chill racing down my spine, because Rowan wasn't just stating a fact. He was preparing for war. Just as I opened my mouth to say more, Elias suddenly bolted upright. Rowan tensed, ready to shift if necessary. But Elias didn't look at him. He looked at me, straight at me. His voice came out in a whisper, but somehow I felt it like a blow to the chest. "You shouldn't have saved me." I stared at him, stunned, hurt, blooming in my stomach like a bruise. "Why?" I whispered. His gaze trembled, like he was fighting something inside him. "Because now they won't stop." Rowan stepped closer, his voice cold and steady. "Who's coming?" Elias shook his head violently. "Not who, what?" His breathing became ragged. "You don't understand. They don't follow rules. They don't fear wolves. They don't fear the moon. They don't fear anything." Rowan exchanged a look with me, one that made my heart drop. Then Elias added one more thing, one sentence that made the room spin, the blood drain from my face, and Rowan's expression go dead still. "They're hunting me," he whispered. "But she's the one they really want." For a moment I thought I'd misheard him. The room felt too small, too still, like the air had stopped moving the second those words left Elias's mouth. "She's the one they really want." My stomach dropped so fast it felt like falling. Rowan stepped closer to him, posture shifting, alpha instincts taking over. "What do you mean, her?" he demanded, voice low and clipped. Elias looked at me with eyes that flickered wildly between gold and brown, like two things inside him were fighting. "They marked you," he whispered. My breath caught. "Marked me? How? I didn't see anything. I didn't." Then I remembered. The moment in the forest when the shadows circled, the cold breeze brushing the back of my neck, the strange sting I'd ignored because I thought it was just a branch. Rowan grabbed my wrist and turned my arm over. His eyes widened. There, just above my elbow, was a thin, dark line, like a bruise shaped into a symbol. A symbol I'd never seen before, a symbol that pulsed faintly under my skin as if it were alive. When did this happen? Rowan asked. I shook my head, unable to look away from the mark. I didn't notice it. His expression hardened. This isn't natural. This isn't magic from our side. Elias winced, gripping the couch. It's how they track. Once they touch you, they don't lose you. The words were like ice poured down my spine. Rowan took a slow breath, the kind that meant he was seconds away from shifting. You brought them to us, he said quietly. You didn't just miss the ceremony, you opened a door. I backed away from him, heart hammering, shame rising like heat under my skin. I didn't know, I whispered. He needed help. Rowan snapped his attention back to me so fast my wolf flinched. And what about the pack? Did they not need protection? Did your family not need you at the ceremony? Did you think destiny waits? He wasn't yelling, but the hurt in his tones stung worse than anger. You weren't there. Maya, you weren't in the circle. The moonstone lit for you and you didn't come. I swallowed hard, guilt choking me. I know. You don't, he said, taking one step closer. Because if you understood what you cost us, what you cost yourself, you never would have walked away. Something broke inside me then, something small and painful. I didn't walk away, I said. I ran towards someone who was dying. Rowan shook his head, jaw tight, nostrils flaring as he inhaled Elias's scent again. Humans die every day. You're a lone wolf. You don't risk your life for strangers. I felt tears burn behind my eyes, angry ones, frustrated ones. So we only save wolves? That's what we are? Rowan stared at me with a coldness I'd never seen from him before. That's what keeps us alive. Elias lifted his head slightly, voice shaking. You can argue later. If she's marked, it's already too late. The cabin lights flickered once, twice. Then everything went dark. My breath stopped. The night outside pressed against the windows like a living thing. The distant crickets that had returned earlier went silent again, too quickly, too completely. Rowan immediately stepped in front of me, his body tense, prepared to shift at any second. Stay behind me, he murmured. For once, I didn't argue. Elias tried to sit up, but only managed to fall to his knees, gripping the edge of the couch. They're close, he breathed. They're drawn to the mark. The darkness seemed thicker than before, like ink pooling in the corners of the room. I heard something, felt something moving outside. Slow, deliberate. My wolf pressed against my skin so hard I thought she'd claw her way out. Rowan reached for the lantern matches, but before he could strike one, the window nearest the door fogged over. Not from cold, from breath. Slow, deep breath. And then a handprint appeared. Long fingers, too long. Wrong in a way that twisted my stomach. Rowan shoved me back, standing in front of me like a wall of muscle and fury. If they step inside, run, he said. Run and shift and don't stop until you hit the ridge. His voice was deadly calm, but I felt the fear beneath it. Real fear. The kind an alpha wasn't supposed to show. Elias shook his head violently. No, you don't run from them. Rowan snapped. What do you suggest? We invite them in for tea? Elias looked up, eyes wild. You hide. You stay silent. You pray. The handprint slid slowly down the glass. Then another appeared, then another. More than two, more than three. Surrounding the cabin on all sides. My breathing turned shallow. I felt the mark on my arm burn, a low ache pulsing in time with the shapes moving outside. Rowan's posture shifted as he prepared to attack. Elias crawled to the wall and pressed his back against it, shaking like he was freezing to death. They're not here to kill her yet, he whispered. They're here to see her. My skin crawled at those words. Rowan gave me a quick glance, softening for a single heartbeat. Whatever happens, he said, I'm not letting them take you. And then the window shattered. Glass exploded inward, spraying across the floor like shards of ice. A long, thin arm, grey skin almost translucent, slid through the opening. The fingers were too many, bending in directions that bones shouldn't bend. Rowan lunged forward, shifting mid-leap, fur bursting from his skin in a flash of silver. His wolf form hit the creature's arm with a snarl that shook the walls. But the arm didn't pull back. It didn't even tense. It simply tilted, as if curious, as if examining him. Rowan growled louder, biting down hard. The sound that came from the creature was not a scream. It wasn't even pain. It was a low, strange hum that rattled the cabin. And then, just as fast as it came, the arm withdrew. We didn't breathe. Not until the forest fell quiet again. Rowan shifted back, chest heaving, sweat and blood dripping from him. They're testing the barriers, he said. They're learning us. Elias nodded weakly. They don't waste effort. They wait for the moment you're weakest. My pulse pounded so loudly I could barely hear him. I sank to my knees, staring at the broken window, the icy night air pouring in. "Why me?" I whispered. "Why would they want me?" Elias looked at me for a long time, too long, before answering. "Because you're not just strong-blooded," he said. His voice cracked. "You're the last one, and they've been looking for you for a very long time." Rowan whipped toward him. "Last one of what?" But Elias didn't get the chance to answer, because outside in the darkness, just beyond the broken window, a voice whispered my name, my real name, perfectly, clearly, like it had been practicing for years. The voice that whispered my name didn't sound human. It didn't sound like a wolf either. It slid through the broken window like smoke, soft and cold, brushing against my skin from the inside out. Hearing it felt like stepping barefoot on ice. Sharp, shocking, wrong. Rowan moved instantly, positioning himself between me and the window, his body trembling with a rage I could feel from feet away. "Don't look," he warned. But the sound, my name spoken so gently, like a lullaby from a nightmare, pulled at something deep in me. My body leaned forward before my mind even caught up. Rowan grabbed my wrist, stopping me cold. "Maya," he snapped. "Focus. Listen to me." His voice fought to anchor me to the moment, but the whisper came again. "Maya, come see." The tone wasn't threatening. It was inviting. Sweet. Wrongly sweet, like someone offering candy over a pit of spikes. Elias scrambled toward me, gripping my ankle. His fingers were icy. "Don't move," he whispered. "That's how they get inside. They don't break your door first. They break your will." My heart hammered as I stared at the silhouette just beyond the shattered glass, tall and narrow and swaying like it was breathing. The fingers that had pressed against the window earlier curled and uncurled slowly, like they were tasting the air. Rowan's wolf instincts surged so violently the room filled with a deep growl I felt in my ribs. The creature leaned closer, and for a split second I saw its face, if you could call it that. No eyes, no mouth, just smooth, pale skin, and yet it smiled without a face. Rowan shoved me backward, breaking whatever trance tried to swallow me. "Get away from the window," he hissed. I stumbled, landing near the table as he snapped into command mode. "Barricade the back door now." The force of his voice jolted both Elias and me into motion. Elias tried to stand but collapsed again, his body shaking uncontrollably. I dragged a heavy cabinet across the floor, muscles burning. My wolf snarled inside me, furious and scared at the same time, the kind of fear that comes from recognizing something older, colder, and hungrier than anything we'd ever known. As I shoved the cabinet into place, Elias crawled toward me, grabbing my sleeve. "Don't let it speak again," he whispered. "If it speaks twice, it knows your mind. If it speaks 3 times... He stopped, swallowing hard. I knelt beside him. "What happens?" His voice cracked. "Then you can't run from it anymore." A fresh wave of fear hit me so fast I almost dropped to the floor. The whisper had already come twice. Twice. That meant one more, and something permanent would happen, something that made Rowan's expression turn deadly when Elias said it. Rowan moved from window to window, checking cracks, sniffing the air, calculating threats like an alpha born for war. But I could see the fear behind the anger. Not fear of dying. Fear of losing control. Fear of losing me to something he couldn't fight with teeth or claws. The mark on my arm pulsed again, burning hotter now, spreading warmth that wasn't comforting at all. It felt like someone was dragging a heated line under my skin, tracing the symbol slowly. I grabbed my arm, gasping. Rowan rushed toward me. "What's happening?" I shook my head, unable to speak through the pain. The mark seemed to twist, the shape shifting beneath my skin like it was alive. Elias forced himself upright, using the couch for support. "It's calling to them," he said. "The mark reacts whenever they're close. You didn't just get tagged, you got chosen." Chosen. The word tasted wrong. "Chosen for what?" I asked. Elias hesitated. "Too long." "Tell me," I snapped. He flinched. "They need someone with your bloodline. You're the last of the original Moonbearers." Rowan spun around to face him. "That's impossible. The Moonbearers died generations ago." Elias shook his head. "Not all of them." My chest tightened as he continued. "The Moonbearers weren't just wolves. They were created to guard the boundary between our world and something older, something that shouldn't cross." My pulse roared in my ears. "Guard it how?" Elias met my eyes, pain and fear and guilt swirling together. "By being the key and the lock. Rowan's jaw clenched. Meaning, Elias exhaled shakily, meaning the creatures can't open the boundary without you, and they can't close it without you either. My blood ran cold. Why me? Elias lowered his voice. Because your blood is the last one strong enough. Rowan's whole body tensed, like he was ready to tear the room apart. If they need her, he growled, then why attack her? Elias looked away. They don't want to hurt her. They want to use her. My stomach twisted. The creature outside pressed its hand to the broken window again, slower this time, like it knew we were talking about it. The fingers tapped softly, tap, 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 almost like it was waiting for permission. Rowan lunged at the window, slamming his palm against the frame. Get away from her, he snarled. The creature tilted its head toward him, curious, unbothered. And then, it whispered again, but this time it didn't say my name. It said Rowan's, perfectly, clearly, like it had known him forever. Rowan froze. Elias's eyes widened. 3, he breathed. It spoke 3 times. A chill ran down my spine. What does that mean? Elias's voice trembled. It means it knows him now, and once it knows your name, it knows your fear. Rowan stiffened, refusing to back away, refusing to show an ounce of fear, but I could see it. A flicker, a crack, something shifting behind his eyes, and the creature seemed to sense it too. Its fingers curled in amusement. The tapping stopped, the forest went still, and then in a low, unnatural voice, one that sounded like 5 voices layered on top of each other, the creature whispered something that made my heart stop altogether. We're coming for what's ours. Then the silhouette vanished, not walked away. Vanished. Rowan turned to me instantly. Get Elias up, we're leaving. Now. I moved toward Elias, pulling his arm around my shoulders. Where are we going? Rowan grabbed the cabin door, yanking it open. His eyes were silver fire. Somewhere they can't follow. I believed him, until we stepped outside. Until I looked at the trees and realized every shadow in the woods was staring back at us. Stepping outside felt like stepping into a nightmare that was pretending to be real. The woods looked normal, dark pines stretching into the night, the moon buried behind clouds, the wind barely moving. But I could feel them, everywhere, watching from every direction. The silence wasn't natural. It was the kind that pressed against your ears like the world was holding its breath. Rowan moved ahead of us, each step quiet but tense, his muscles coiled tight beneath his skin. He wasn't just leading, he was shielding. I helped Elias down the porch stairs, his weight heavy against me, his breath coming in painful gasps. They're not close enough to attack, he murmured, voice trembling. But they're watching her. They always watch the marked one. My stomach twisted. Why aren't they stopping us? Elias hesitated. Because they don't need to. The mark pulls you toward them eventually. Rowan turned back, voice low and sharp. Don't listen to him. Keep walking. But I could feel it, the heat in my arms spreading slowly upward like tendrils of warmth crawling beneath my skin, like something calling me from deep in the forest, something ancient, something patient. Rowan took a breath and then spoke the words that cut through my spinning thoughts. We have one chance to lose them, and we need to reach the ridge before they realize where I'm taking you. We moved through the trees, sticking to the narrow deer trails that cut between thick brush and slanted rocks. The forest seemed wrong tonight, too still, too dark, too quiet. Even the moon refused to shine. Elias stumbled often, and each time he did, Rowan would grab his other arm and hoist him up with one hand, frustration and worry fighting on his face. You didn't tell me everything, Rowan said to him after the 3rd stumble. Elias winced. You didn't ask everything. Rowan growled under his breath. What do they want with her? Elias opened his mouth, but his words dissolved into a harsh cough. When he finally spoke again, his voice was thin. She's the last of her line, the last moonbearer. They need her blood to open what's left of the boundary. Rowan's jaw tightened. I thought the boundary was sealed centuries ago. Elias stared ahead at the dark trees. It was, but seals don't last forever. Not when something is pushing from the other side. A cold wind swept through the forest and raising goosebumps up my arms. What's on the other side? I whispered. Elias didn't answer immediately. When he did, it wasn't loud, just a breath. The ones older than wolves, older than humans, the ones the moon locked away. My heartbeat stumbled. Rowan muttered, Goddess help us. And for a second, I thought even he didn't believe she was listening. We were maybe 15 minutes from the ridge when Elias suddenly stopped walking. His body went rigid, like something invisible had grabbed him. I turned, panic rising. Elias? His eyes widened, gold flashing violently behind the brown, and his breath escaped in a strangled gasp. "They're here," he whispered. Rowan and I froze. "How many?" Rowan asked. Elias shuddered. "All of them." The trees around us shifted, shadows stretching unnaturally, bending where nothing should bend. A cold pressure built in the air, thick and heavy, like the forest itself was leaning toward us. Rowan grabbed my hand and pulled me behind a rock outcrop, his breath hot and fast against my ear. "Stay down. Don't make a sound." I crouched low, pulling Elias down beside me. The mark on my arm pulsed harder now, stronger, almost painful. Something deep inside me stirred in response, like a dormant part of me was waking. I squeezed my arm, trying to silence it, but the forest had already noticed. A tall shape stepped out from behind a cedar tree, smooth grey skin, limbs too long, head tilted in that slow, unnatural way, then another shape and another. A whole circle of them, forming silently around us. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Rowan shifted his stance, claws half out, ready to die fighting if he had to. Elias whispered one trembling word: "Run." But we couldn't run. The creatures were too close, too fast, too wrong. They didn't move like predators. They moved like thoughts, sliding, flickering, appearing where they weren't a blink ago. Rowan stood up, shielding me with his body, growling so deep the ground seemed to vibrate. One of the creatures stepped forward. Its faceless head turned toward me, even though it had no eyes. Slowly, almost gently, it reached out a long bending hand. That's when the mark on my arm ignited. White-hot pain exploded through me, knocking me to my knees. I screamed without meaning to, clutching my arm as the symbol twisted beneath my skin like it was alive. Rowan dropped beside me instantly. "Maya! Maya, look at me!" But I couldn't. My vision blurred. My heartbeat raced into something wild and inhuman. The trees around us flickered. The air thickened. Elias grabbed my shoulders, shouting something I couldn't hear. The creatures leaned closer. And then everything stopped. Completely, utterly, the forest froze in place. Even the wind held still, like someone had pressed pause on the world, and in that impossible silence, a fourth voice whispered my name. Not the creatures, not Elias, not Rowan. This voice was familiar, achingly familiar. A woman's voice, soft, warm, full of love that cut straight through my chest, a voice I hadn't heard in years, my mother's voice, and she said only 3 words, words that shattered me where I knelt. "Don't trust him." My breath caught. "Who?" I whispered, trembling. The silence that followed was sharper than any scream. Rowan pulled me tight against him, whispering my name, trying to bring me back, but I couldn't look away from the darkness where her voice had come from. Elias stared at me like he knew exactly what I'd heard. The creatures melted back into the trees, vanishing all at once. The world unpaused, the wind returned, the forest breathed again. Rowan helped me to my feet, gripping my shoulders, eyes desperate. "Maya, what did you hear?" I looked at him, heartbreaking. "My mother." His expression softened, but only for a moment. What did she say? The words stuck in my throat, because if my mother was right, then everything I thought I knew was wrong. I swallowed. My voice cracked as I answered. She said not to trust him. Rowan frowned. "Who?" And when I looked at Elias, he stared back at me with a grief so deep it almost drowned me. Because he knew. He knew exactly who I meant. The forest felt different after her voice. Alive in a way that made my skin crawl, like every tree was listening to the thundering of my heart. Rowan kept staring between me and Elias, confusion and anger mixing into something unstable. "Maya," Rowan said again, softer this time. "Who did she mean? Who shouldn't you trust?" My throat tightened until it hurt to breathe. My mother had been gone for years, buried under cold Arizona soil, her voice a memory I'd cried myself to sleep with more nights than I could count. Hearing her now, in this nightmare of a forest, wasn't possible, wasn't real. But it felt real. So real that it hollowed out my chest. Elias watched me with those flickering gold-brown eyes, his face pale, his lips trembling. He didn't speak. He didn't deny anything. He didn't defend himself. He just stared. Rowan stepped forward, protective anger flaring again. "She isn't talking," he growled. "You answer, now. What aren't you telling us?" Elias closed his eyes like the question physically hurt him. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked like something inside him broke. I didn't want you to know like this. My pulse stumbled. Rowan grabbed him by the front of his torn shirt, lifting him halfway off the ground. Know what? Elias inhaled shakily. That I didn't want you to know like this. His eyes opened slowly, locking onto mine. I came for you. I felt the ground sink beneath me. The words didn't make sense, couldn't make sense. Rowan dropped him instantly, jaw tight. Explain. Now. Elias leaned back against a tree stump, wincing, one hand pressed to his ribs. I didn't lie about being hunted. They're real. They're worse than anything you know. But the reason they chased me? He shook his head. It wasn't because I escaped them. It was because I took something they wanted. Rowan's eyes flashed dangerously. What did you take? Elias looked down at his hands, stained with dried blood. A name. My heartbeat slowed, heavy and cold. A name. Elias nodded weakly. Your name. Your bloodline. Your legacy. Rowan snarled, shifting halfway before pulling himself back. I stepped closer, my voice barely holding together. What do you mean? He lifted his gaze to mine, tears gathering. I found records. Pieces of old stories, things buried so deep the elders destroyed the rest. The moonbearers didn't vanish. They were hunted, one by one, until they reached your mother. I felt like someone had cut open my chest. Rowan froze completely. Elias continued, voice trembling. The creatures marked your mother before they killed her, because she was the bearer, the one meant to guard the boundary. When she died, the mark passed to the next in line. His eyes filled with tears. You? My knees buckled. Rowan caught me with both hands, pulling me close before I hit the ground. My mother, my gentle, soft, smiling mother, hunted by these things? Marked? Chosen? I shook my head violently. No, she died in a fire. Everyone said. Elias flinched. They lied. The air left my lungs so fast I gasped. Rowan tightened his hold on me, his heartbeat pounding against mine. Why would the elders lie? He growled. Elias wiped his mouth with the back of his shaking hand to court, because if the pack knew the truth, panic would break them. Moonbearers weren't protectors. They were sacrifices, living locks holding back ancient doors. Your mother refused. She ran. They found her. And when she died, the lineage shifted to you. My arms wrapped around myself without thinking, like I was trying to hold in the pieces of me coming apart. Elias leaned closer, pain twisting his face. The creatures need you alive. The boundary only opens with a willing bearer. That's why they watched. That's why they whispered your name. Rowan snarled. Then why the hell did they whisper mine? Elias's voice dropped. Because they can't take her without breaking the alpha bond first. Rowan stiffened. There is no alpha bond. She didn't attend the ceremony. She didn't choose. Elias exhaled shakily. But the moonstone did. My breath stopped. Rowan went completely still. Elias swallowed. She was chosen for you, even if she didn't stand in the circle. Rowan looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time, like a truth he'd been avoiding had just ripped itself open. His voice dropped to a whisper. Maya, you were my fated mate. I felt the air shift between us, felt something old and electric hum beneath my skin. But before I could speak, Elias added something that shattered whatever warmth was forming in my chest. And that's exactly why they want you, because an alpha's mate has the strongest blood connection of all. I staggered back, heart pounding, vision spinning. Rowan reached for me, but I jerked away instinctively, unable to breathe around everything collapsing inside me. My mother's voice, my lineage, the mark twisting beneath my skin. Rowan being my mate. Elias hiding the truth, the creatures wanting me. None of it fit together. None of it made sense. Elias's voice cracked again. I'm sorry, Maya. I didn't come to hurt you. I came to warn you, to take you somewhere safe before they could claim you. Rowan stepped between us, his voice shaking with rage. You led them straight to her, straight to us. Elias shook his head desperately. No. They were already tracking her. The mark found her the moment she stepped into the forest. My being here only delayed it. Rowan's chest rose and fell in sharp, heavy breaths. Why should we believe anything you say? Elias's gaze softened in a way that made my stomach twist. Because I didn't come for them. He looked at me again, voice breaking. I came for you. I came because your mother asked me to. My eyes shot up to his. My mother? Elias nodded, tears falling. She told me that if anything ever happened to her, I had to find you before they did. My heart stopped. Rowan froze. The world tilted. Elias whispered the last truth softly, like a confession. Because your mother and I? We weren't strangers. She saved me once, and she made me promise to save you. Everything tilted after Elias said those words. The forest blurred at the edges, the ground felt unsteady, and Rowan's hand slipped from my arm as if even he didn't know how to hold me after that. My mother, my quiet, gentle mother who baked honey bread on Sundays and tucked lavender under my pillow so I'd sleep better, had saved Elias, had known these creatures, had prepared for this moment. My heart thrashed in my chest, painful and confused. Rowan looked at Elias like he was seeing a ghost he wanted to rip apart. "Explain," he snarled, voice cracking. Elias pressed a hand to the tree trunk, his breathing ragged. "Years ago, before you were born, your mother crossed the boundary." My blood chilled. Rowan stiffened, but Elias kept going. "She wasn't supposed to, no one is, but she sensed something wrong, something pulling." Elias closed his eyes as if remembering hurt. "Yeah, I was there, a child, lost, dying. She found me, she brought me back." I shook my head slowly. "Back from where?" Elias opened his eyes, and for the first time I realised his gaze didn't just look haunted. It looked touched by something not fully human. "From the other side." Rowan stepped toward him, rage flaring. "Then you're not human." Elias didn't back away. "Not fully, not anymore. The boundary left its mark on me." My stomach twisted. Why didn't she tell me? Elias's voice softened. "Because she wanted you to live, to be normal, to grow up without the burden she carried. She planned to train you when you were older." His voice cracked. "But she didn't get the chance." Rowan put himself between us, protective instincts rising like a wall. "What happened the night she died?" His voice lowered. "Tell her the truth." Elias looked at me with a guilt so heavy it nearly broke me. "Your mother knew they were coming. They hunt the bearer when the seal weakens. She made me run. I didn't want to leave her, but she ordered me to. And when I looked back..." He swallowed hard, shaking. "I saw them mark her." My chest tightened. Tears blurred my vision. "She burned in the fire because of them," Elias nodded slowly. "They destroy the body to erase the mark, to force the lineage forward." A sob clawed up my throat. Rowan reached for me, but I stepped back. I needed to breathe. I needed the world to stop spinning. Elias wiped his face. "She told me that if she didn't make it, I had to find you. I had to protect you." I stared at him, trembling. "Then why didn't you come sooner?" His voice cracked. "Because they watched me. Because I knew the moment I got close, they'd start hunting again. And because I wasn't strong enough to face them until I realised they were going to find you anyway." Rowan turned to me, eyes softer than I'd ever seen. "Maya, I'm so sorry." I looked at him through tears. "For what?" Rowan's jaw tightened. "For not being there, for not listening to you that night, for not knowing the truth when I should have sensed it." I shook my head, but it didn't matter. Nothing could undo the truth unravelling inside me. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying a scent that made Rowan stiffen immediately. Not the creatures. Wolves. Multiple. My pack. Rowan turned toward the ridge, eyes sharp. "They're coming." "My guards." They caught the trail. Elias went pale. No, you have to stop them. They can't fight these things." Rowan growled. "I didn't call them to fight. I called them to protect." Elias grabbed his arm. "They'll die. You don't understand. These creatures don't attack like animals, they erase." Rowan shoved him back. "Then we outrun them." But before we could move, my arm burned again, hotter than ever. The mark glowed faintly, bright enough that Rowan saw it and swore. "The boundary is reacting to you," Elias whispered. "It's opening. You're waking it." I wrapped my hands around the mark, gasping from the heat radiating under my skin. "Make it stop," I begged. Elias knelt in front of me. "I can't. Only you can." Rowan knelt too, gripping my shoulders. "Look at me, Maya. Look at me." I forced myself to meet his eyes. Silver, fierce, determined. "You're not alone," he said. "Whatever this is, whatever they want, you're not facing it alone." I wanted to believe him. Goddess, I wanted to. But my mother's voice echoed again in my head. "Don't trust him." And then the world ruptured. A deep, guttural, tearing sound ripped through the forest like the earth itself was splitting open. The ground trembled beneath our feet. A long, jagged crack appeared in the soil several yards away, pulsing with a faint white glow. Rowan pulled me behind him instantly, shielding me as the crack widened. Elias staggered forward, horror on his face. "No, not here. Not now." The crack erupted with a gust of freezing air that sucked the warmth from my lungs. Shadows poured out, thick, slow, twisting like smoke underwater. The creatures stirred within the trees, responding to the breach like wolves scenting fresh blood. Rowan growled, the sound feral, ready to fight the entire forest if he had to. Elias stepped toward the crack, hands raised as if trying to hold it closed by will alone. "It's opening," he cried. "The boundary is opening." My pulse thundered. Because of me? Elias didn't turn, but I heard the truth in his breaking voice. Yes. The wind roared louder, the shadows thickening. And then, rising out of the crack, came a shape taller than the others, a shape made of shifting darkness, its outline barely holding together. It lifted one long arm and pointed at me. Rowan snarled, stepping in front of me, but the shadow's voice rolled out like thunder wrapped in silk. "Bearer." My knees buckled. Heat exploded through my arm again, merging with the cold from the boundary. The creature took one step forward, silent yet crushing, and extended its hand as though offering a choice. "Come," it whispered, "or your pack dies." Rowan roared, shifting halfway as panic flashed across his face. "Don't listen." But the creature wasn't done. Its faceless head tilted toward me. "Your mother came," it said. "She obeyed." My heart shattered. I didn't know what was real anymore. Elias ran toward me, grabbing my wrist. "Don't move," he begged. "That's exactly what they want." Rowan grabbed my other arm. "I'll fight them all before I let you go." And then, like knives sliding between us, the shadow whispered one more sentence that made the world tilt off its axis. "The Alpha lies." Rowan's eyes widened. Elias froze. And I realized with a sickening twist in my stomach that the creatures knew exactly how to break me. The moment those words left the shadow's mouth. The Alpha lies. Something inside me tore open. Not just fear, not just confusion, but something deeper, something that felt like betrayal before I even knew what was true or false. Rowan's fingers tightened around my arm in an instant, as if he feared I'd slip into the darkness with just a single breath. "Don't listen to it," he growled, voice shaking, not from anger, but something far more dangerous, desperation. Elias held my other arm, his grip trembling. "They manipulate," he whispered harshly. "They twist truth until you can't recognize it. Don't let them inside your head." But the creature's faceless head tilted toward Rowan, and the air around us thickened, humming with a dark, seductive power that made every hair on my body rise. "Ask him," it whispered. "Ask what he hid." Rowan's jaw clenched so tight the muscle jumped in his cheek. I stared at him, my heart pounding like a drum being beaten by a trembling hand. "Rowan," I breathed, "what is it talking about?" His eyes flicked to mine, silver, fierce, full of a pain he tried to hide, and that flicker was all the creature needed. A cold, slithering certainty twisted down my spine. There was something. Elias stepped between us, shouting at the creature, "You don't get to use her! You don't get to speak!" But the shadow didn't stop. Its voice slid under Elias's words like a blade. "The Alpha found out weeks ago," Rowan stiffened, "that she was the bearer." My breath hitched. Elias froze. Rowan swore under his breath, eyes squeezing shut as if the truth physically hurt him. "Maya," he said, reaching for me, "just listen." But I ripped my arm out of his grasp like his touch burned. Elias stepped closer, placing himself between me and Rowan almost protectively, though he was shaking. "You knew?" I whispered, staring at Rowan as the world narrowed down to just him. "You knew what I was?" Rowan's voice cracked, the sound splintering something inside me. "I suspected." My heart dropped. "Suspected?" The shadow behind him hummed, feeding off the fracture forming between us. "He knew," it purred. "He has always known." Rowan's expression contorted with anger, at the creature, at the situation, at himself. "I didn't know," he snapped, "not for sure. But I—" He stopped, breath shaking, eyes on me. "I felt it. The moonstone reacted to your name differently than anyone else's. It burned brighter. It called. I stepped back, dizziness washing over me. And you didn't tell me?" He flinched. Elias answered instead, voice hollow. "Because if she knew, she could refuse the calling." Rowan rounded on him. "That wasn't why." The shadow whispered again, almost laughing. "He wanted the bond complete before she learned." Rowan's face drained of colour. "That's not true." But my heart dropped into a cold, aching void. "You wanted me bound to you," I whispered, "even if it meant lying?" Rowan reached for me, but I stepped away again. "Maya, no," he pleaded, voice breaking. "I wanted to protect you. That's all I've ever wanted." The creature tilted its head. "Protection? Or possession?" Rowan snarled, shifting halfway, fur rippling along his arms as his wolf forced its way through anger. Shut up. The creature didn't. He wanted your power. The bond amplifies the alpha's strength. Text. He wanted what you carry. My breath stuttered. I stared at Rowan. For the first time since I'd known him, I didn't recognize him. Elias moved closer to me, his voice softening to a trembling whisper. Maya, look at me. I couldn't. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out the forest, the wind, everything. The ground trembled again, the crack in the earth widening with a deep groan, like the world itself was splitting at the seams. Cold, blinding white light leaked through it. The creatures shifted excitedly, whispering among themselves in that layered, inhuman voice that made my skin crawl. Rowan stood between me and the growing breach, his chest heaving, torn between fighting them and reaching for me. I didn't lie, he said, raw. I didn't betray you. My voice cracked. Then why didn't you tell me? He swallowed hard. Because I was afraid. Of what? He didn't answer. Couldn't. Elias stepped in, voice cracking. He was afraid the pack would take you from him. Rowan roared and slammed Elias against a tree so fast I barely saw it. Shut your mouth, he snarled, eyes blazing. Elias coughed, blood on his lip. Tell her I'm lying then. Tell her the council didn't warn you. Tell her you didn't check her blood under the last full moon. Rowan froze, grip loosening as guilt flickered across his face. And that flicker was all I needed. I staggered back, shaking. Rowan. He faced me slowly, something breaking inside him. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The shadows hissed with pleasure, feeding on the fracture. Elias reached for my hand, voice hoarse. Maya, come with me. We can still close the boundary. The ground erupted, cutting him off. A blast of freezing air shot upward, throwing all three of us back. My body slammed into the dirt, the impact knocking the breath from my lungs. The crack in the earth expanded violently, light bursting from it like lightning trapped underground. The largest creature stepped through the glow, its form solidifying it as it crossed the boundary. Shadows rippled off its body like smoke peeled from flame. It raised its head, faceless, endless, and the forest bowed around it. Elias crawled toward me, grabbing my shoulders. You have to choose, he rasped. Right now. Them or... His voice cut out when the creature's arm extended and wrapped around Rowan's throat. Rowan convulsed, clawing at the shadowy limb, his eyes wide with pain. Maya! He choked. The creature lifted him easily like he weighed nothing. Elias pulled me closer, panicked. If you take one step toward the alpha, they'll drag you into the boundary. If you take one step toward the boundary, Rowan dies. My blood turned to ice. My mind tore in two. My wolf howled inside me, torn between mate bond and destiny. Rowan's voice cracked as the creature tightened its grip. Maya, don't let it take you. Elias grabbed my hand, his eyes desperate and full of pain. Choose, now. And as the boundary's light swallowed the forest and Rowan's body jerked helplessly against the creature's hold, I realized the nightmare wasn't the creatures or the mark or the legacy. The nightmare was the choice. I never knew a heartbeat could split in half. One part of mine screamed for Rowan, the alpha who'd stood between me and death more than once. The wolf destiny had chosen for me even before I understood what fate meant. The other part pulled toward the boundary, toward the light, toward the truth burning beneath my skin. Elias's fingers clutched my hand like he was holding on to the last thread of hope, his breathing ragged, his eyes full of a pain that didn't belong to just him. Maya, if they take you through that boundary, you'll never come back, he whispered. You'll break the seal. You'll free them. Rowan gagged, his feet kicking against the earth as the creature lifted him higher. Don't choose me, he choked out, and hearing him say that shattered something so deep inside me it almost brought me to my knees. But my mother's voice echoed again, a soft, desperate warning. Don't trust him. The boundary pulsed with blinding white, shadows swirling in hungry circles around it. My arm burned, my heart screamed. I took one step forward, toward Rowan, and the entire forest seemed to inhale. The creatures leaned in, waiting. The boundary shimmered, eager. Elias's grip tightened until my bones ached. If you choose him, they'll take you, Elias warned, voice trembling, and they'll destroy the seal. I stared at Rowan, silver eyes dulling as the creature's grip tightened. My choice would save one life and doom everyone else. I felt the cracking inside me, the kind that doesn't heal cleanly. Elias pulled me toward him, turning my face with trembling hands. Look at me, he whispered. I did. And for a moment everything else faded, the boundary, the creatures, the terror. It was just him. He looked at me like my mother used to when she wanted me to be brave. Your mother died to keep that boundary closed, he murmured. She died so you could have a choice, so you wouldn't be forced. A tear tracked down his cheek. Don't throw her sacrifice away because your heart aches for someone who hid the truth to protect his power. The words hit hard, harder than I wanted them to. Rowan thrashed, choking as he tried to speak. Maya, I... But the creature squeezed harder, silencing him. Elias cupped my face. You are not a sacrifice, he said. You are the lock, and you can choose to stay locked. Another step, toward the boundary this time. The light warmed my skin in a way that felt too familiar, too ancient. My mother's voice whispered again, soft as breath. Choose the world over the bond. Elias's eyes met mine, raw and terrified. If you stay, you live. The pack lives. Rowan lives. His voice cracked. But if you step into that light, everything ends. I looked at Rowan one last time. His eyes were pleading, apologizing, breaking. And in that fractured moment, I knew what I had to do. I tore my hand from Elias's grip. He reached for me, but I stepped back out of his hold. For one awful heartbeat, he thought I'd chosen the boundary. His face crumpled, horror twisting his features. But I wasn't walking toward the boundary. I wasn't walking toward Rowan either. I was walking toward the center of them both. My body trembled as I lifted my marked arm, holding it out toward the crack in the earth. Rowan's eyes widened. Elias whispered, No, Maya, you can't, but I could. Because the mark wasn't just a key to open the boundary. It was a key to close it. My mother's final warning wasn't about Rowan. It wasn't about Elias. It was about me, about trusting myself, about choosing my own fate. I stepped toward the glowing fissure, slow, shaking, terrified, and placed my hand directly over the crack. The shadows shrieked, recoiling instantly. The largest creature dropped Rowan, its faceless head turning sharply toward me. Rowan collapsed to the ground, gasping, clawing at the dirt. Maya, he screamed, trying to crawl toward me. Elias lunged forward, but the force radiating from my arm threw him backward like a wave. The ground vibrated beneath my feet. The light surged upward, gripping my arm like a burning chain. I screamed as the symbol on my skin flared white-hot, searing through every nerve in my body. But I didn't pull away. I pushed. The fissure fought back. The shadows poured against my body like wind trying to tear me apart. My lungs screamed for air, my knees buckled. The forest roared around me, bending the trees and shaking the ground. Somewhere behind the noise, I heard Rowan calling my name over and over, voice raw, broken. Elias shouted something, but the wind stole his words. My vision blurred as the light swallowed my arm up to the elbow. Pain tore through me so viciously I saw stars, but I kept pushing, until the boundary screamed. The sound cracked through the forest like thunder. The fissure trembled violently, shrinking, folding inward on itself. The largest creature lunged, reaching for me, its long bending arm inches from my throat, when a brilliant flash erupted from the mark on my arm. The blast tore through the clearing, vaporizing the shadow in an instant. The others screeched, dissolving like smoke in wind. The boundary crack snapped closed with a final deafening boom that knocked me to the ground. Silence crashed down after it, heavy, complete. When the world stopped shaking, I was lying on my side, the smell of earth and pine filling my lungs. Rowan crawled toward me, his body battered, eyes wild. Maya, he whispered, hands shaking as he touched my face. Maya, please, open your eyes. I blinked slowly, the sky blurring above me. Elias staggered to my other side, breathless and bleeding. She's alive, he said softly. She did it. I felt cold, exhausted, empty. The mark on my arm had faded to a pale scar. Rowan gathered me against his chest, pressing his forehead to mine. You saved us, he whispered. You saved everyone. Elias stared at me with a mixture of awe and grief. Your mother would be proud, he murmured. I closed my eyes. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a girl who'd lost something she didn't know how to name. The boundary was sealed. The creatures were gone. The pack was safe. But something inside me had changed forever. I pulled away from Rowan gently. He froze, confusion flickering through his eyes. Are you leaving? He whispered. I nodded faintly. I need time, I said, voice small but steady, to understand what I am now, to understand what's left. Rowan looked shattered, but he didn't stop me. He didn't pull me back. He just nodded, eyes full of a love both broken and real. Elias helped me stand, his touch gentle. Where will you go? he asked. I looked toward the mountains where the first hint of dawn touched the sky. Where she told me to, I whispered. Somewhere I can trust myself again. And as I walked away, leaving Rowan kneeling in the dirt, Elias watching with hollow eyes, and the forest still trembling from what I'd done, I realised something. Peace doesn't come cheap, but for the first time in my life, I was finally free. And that was my story. If you stayed with me until this moment, if you felt every heartbeat, every fear, every twist that broke me and rebuilt me, thank you. I didn't think I'd ever be strong enough to speak these memories out loud. I didn't think the words would come out without shaking me apart again. But here we are. If you've ever been lied to by someone you loved, if you've ever had to choose between your heart and your destiny, if you've ever had to save yourself even when it hurt, then maybe you understood a piece of my journey. I learned something in those woods, something my mother tried to teach me long before the shadows came. You can lose your home, your safety, your people, even the version of yourself you thought you were, and still rise. You can break and still be chosen. You can walk away trembling and still call it strength. So if you're listening to this right now, please drop a comment and tell me what part of the world you're watching from. I read all of them. And if my story touched something in you, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me for the next one. Because trust me, this wasn't the end of my journey, just the beginning of another.